So let's start with the classic challenge in procurement and finance, vendor onboarding and the need to review vast amounts of data to understand the risks associated with your vendor and whether or not you can actually work with them. We then have that final step for each of these, which is a very detailed review followed by a range of different approvals. Now, when we think about vendor onboarding, regardless of how light touch or in-depth your vendor onboarding process is, it's notoriously slow and effort intensive. On average, it takes around 90 days to onboard a new vendor from initial application through to the approved status. In 40% of companies, onboarding is delayed by over 2 weeks due solely to sluggish approval cycles between departments. I've experienced this when I used to work in procurement, legal. I know all of you have as well. So, and we can put an end to this with LuminIQ. Enter the vendor onboarding Lumin Agent. It automates your internal due diligence workflow by following pre-agreed approval, rejection, and escalation criteria. To add to this, it also uses your specific criteria, such as your vendor onboarding policies, your SOPs, your processes, or risk committee requirements. Pretty much anything that you require can be used with this Lumin agent. So let's get started with this. In this scenario, your vendor needs to complete an AI due diligence questionnaire. We're going to use Rhino Inc. over here. They've completed the vendor questionnaire over in the vendor portal. They just haven't submitted it yet. They've also uploaded their AI policy, the AI risk assessment, to provide additional evidence for you. Now, once this form is submitted, it will land on your Lumin Agent review phase, which you can see just here. And this workflow is quite a nice, simple one. This will work regardless of how long or wide on screen your workflows are. But I've got the vendor questionnaire linked to the vendor portal. We have a Lumin Agent review, which is when my Lumin Agent is going to come in, review all of Rhino Inc.'s response, any files attached to that response, and then it's going to actually say whether or not it approves or rejects that vendor. Now, more importantly here, we have a procurement review phase, and this is our human in the loop phase. This is where I, as the human, I, as the one whose job it is to make sure we make very good decisions about our vendor, will make that final call, regardless of what the Lumin Agent says. If I don't agree with its decision, I can override that. So we always have the human in the loop. The hope is that the Lumin Agent here will review Rhino Inc.'s response super fast and give me some really cool insights. So Rhino Inc. has submitted their vendor due diligence for AI. And now we're kind of at a waiting game, right? I'm waiting for my Lumin Agent to hopefully very quickly review this card. It's all of its details and the attached file. And what we'll be able to do in just a moment is when I open the card or when I refresh the page and it moves over to the procurement review phase, we'll see all of the reasons that my Lumin Agent has given with regards to its approve or reject decision. So I'm going to hit refresh here. And as you can see, it's literally just dropped into the procurement review phase. And there you go, straight at the top of the card, you can see that the Lumin Agent has actually approved that this vendor be onboarded. And it gives a range of different answers as to why it should be. You can even see here, and this is kind of where my eye went straight away, there's a key factors for approval, a bulleted list, 5 top reasons. We can see here a strong adherence to industry best practices and internal policies. And yeah, this just blows my mind. And I've been playing around with this a lot internally. I used to have to spend pretty much most of my day doing work like this, which was reviewing a bunch of different vendor due diligence forms. Sometimes there are 100 questions long, sometimes 200, sometimes more. And it's exhausting. You get to the point where you're just seeing the same words in different ways coming up time and time again. And you start to think like, oh, I've got so much other cool work I could be doing. we know we've got underperforming vendors and we can't quite get to those because we're constantly in the cycle of just onboarding new vendors, which ultimately will probably start underperforming as the contract goes on. But this is absolutely incredible. And just imagine if this process was rolled out in every single one of your organizations. I've shown you quite a simple approval process that has me as the human in the loop here. I'm just going to write, I'm happy with this, typo included. And now we've moved it over to be fully onboarded. What took 90 days on average took, let's call it 13 minutes. And that 13 minutes there is mainly because I left it sitting in this area for the demo purposes, right? But that took a matter of minutes. And it really doesn't matter how many you have. This is completely scalable. If you've got 10 coming in at a time, if you've got 20 coming in at a time, the Lumin Agent is going to get to these instantly, which unlike me, I'm never going to get to these instantly, sadly, because I've got so many other hats I'm wearing. I'm juggling so much other work. It's ultimately incredible. But what we're going to go do now is I want to show you a contract use case that gets me just as excited as this one.